Myself, I'm R.BHUSHAN. Welcome to ASG IAS Current Affairs. The editorial of the Hindu newspaper, Saturday, 7th September 2019. The Hindu editorial, fast, furious, accurate. Calls for the duty that will hurt the US economy. Calls of duty that will hurt the US economy. Calls for the duty that will hurt the US economy. The Trump administration latest set of the tariffs and the China relatorily levies take the world closer to slow down. This article was written by Biswajit Dhar. Over the past few weeks, the trade war between US and China has been significantly escalation. On August 20, the US administration notified its decision to impose 15% tariffs in two phases on imports value up to $300 billion. The latest round of the tariff increases implies that the country has imposed tariffs on almost all of the product of imports from China, totally nearly $540 billion in 2018. Pharmaceutical imports are the only major exception. Immediately after the US administration issued the notification, China announced additional tariffs on more than 5,000 products imported from the US, valued $75 billion. The sensitive sectors of agriculture and forestry were targeted. Tariffs were also hiked for the first time on the crude oil. On September 2nd, China raised the ante by initiating a dispute in the World Trade Organization WTO against the US unilateral tariff increases. Earlier, the US administration had targeted China primarily for what it is perceived to be violation by the letter of the intellectual property rights IPR of American companies. The administration's argument was that Beijing was forcing these companies to transfer their proprietary technology. In fact, on this issue, the US became the judge and the jury by indicating China for indulging in forced technology transfer and then bringing penal provision against its import using the provisions of the Trade Act of 1974. The provision act, this act, like Section 301, allowed the U.S. to investigate any country which is its opinion that violated IPRs of American companies. If found guilty, the violating countries can be sanctioned with the trade retaliation. The tariffs increases against Chinese product were the tantamount to trade retaliation. It needs to be further mentioned here that Section 301 actions or violation of WTO rules as dispute must be violated by the organization dispute settlement mechanism. Currency manipulator. However, while triggering the most recent escalation, the US administration not only violated the spirit of multilateralism, it also shifted the goalpost. This time the action was triggered when the US Secretary of Treasury Stephen Mnuchin invoked the provision of Section 3004 of the Omnibus Trade and Competitiveness Act. This section authorizes the Treasury Secretary to examine whether the US trade partners are manipulating the rate of the exchange for the purpose of preventing effective balance of the payments and adjustments or gaining unfair competition advantage in international trade. Earlier, Mr. Mnuchin had August called the US largest trade partner a currency manipulator. For the first time, the Washington used the label against any country since 1994. Mr. Mnuchin's determinations were based on a report presented to the US Congress last year that concluded that China exchange rate practices continue to lack transparency, including its intervention in foreign exchange markets. Although it found that direct intervention in foreign exchange market by the People's Bank of China over the past several months was limited. Beijing was targeted for the long history of the facilitating an undervalued currency through protected large-scale intervention in the foreign exchange markets at the Department of Treasury. The latest action by the Trump administration rejects its last two sets of the issue. The first concern its pursuit of the unilateralism, and anthemina in the post-war economic governance framework underlined by the principles of the multilateral. Since the coming of the Trump administration, the US has repeatedly undermined this principle. The country has challenged the framework of the multilaterally agreed rules in the two ways. First, to not working, allowing to WTO members to conduct negotiations so that the rules respond to the needs of the member, especially the lesser developed countries, and the second, by making the dispute settlement mechanism non-functional. A critic A critical component of the dispute settlement mechanism is the appellate body, which needs 7 members to function effectively. But the U.S. administration refused to allow retiring members of the appellate body to replaced by the new members, and this had brought to the dispute settlement mechanism to the brink. Second, nearly a year and a half after the trade war was officially announced in Washington, one question that begs on answer is, have the American people gained anything from the exertion of the administrations? Are there any signs of President Trump's vision of making America great again, making America great again, making America great again, making America great again, making America is gaining further traction? Small vector trade tariffs. We will consider the pattern of the trade flows from the past years. Tariffs were able to reduce U.S. dependence on China in 2018, almost 9 months of which saw the trade war playing out. The U.S. trade deficit with China reached a record high of the over $419 billion, nearly 12% higher than that in the previous year, and the steepest increase in 2010. In the last 5 months of 2018, when the tariffs was introduced by both countries, the tariff deficit was $196 billion, 15% higher than that in the corresponding period in 2017. In other words, the tariffs did not reduce the deficit. In the first half of the current year, the U.S. trade deficit reduced by about 10%, and while imports from the China declined $31 billion, export to China also declined by the $12 billion. Thus, the U.S. was not left untouched by the trade war. There is hardly any doubt that the latest round of the tariff increases would hurt the U.S. economy even more, since China has targeted agriculture and crude oil, two of the most sensitive sectors. Two of the most sensitive, that is crude oil and agriculture. An impact on these sectors could adversely affect President Trump politically, because people and companies associated with these areas are among the president's major funders, FUND, major funder. Further, since the current round in the tariffs target products like garment, toothbrush, footwear, toys, video games, the U.S. consumer goods market will be impacted quite considerably. Clearly, the administration is worried about the price increases following the imposition of tariff on some of these goods. Our region has postponed the tariff increases until after the Christmas purchase. The timing of the latest escalation could not have been worse. It could bring the global economy closer to an economic slowdown much earlier than it's predicted onset in 2000. So calls of the duty that will hurt the US economy. Calls of the duty that hurt this article was Biswajit Dhar is a professor, Center of Economic Studies and Planning, School Social Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Thank you so much to watch my program. Please do not forget to subscribe this channel. Thank you.